Alright, welcome back. So in this lecture we're going to be setting up the Equippable Master Class that we're going to use for all of our equipable items such as our weapons or tools, but we're going to be creating the main Equippable Master Class that we're going to be using for our hatchet equipable. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing that we need to do is go into our blueprints, and we're going to go over to our items folder. So here we have our blueprint, our BP item master. So if you remember, we created this in one of our very first lectures when we created our item info. And so if we open this up, currently there's nothing in it. We can open full blueprint editor. There's nothing in this, and that's totally fine. What we want to do is right click this and create a child blueprint class. Okay, so we want to create a child blueprint, and we're going to name this BP underscore Equippable Master. So BP underscore Equippable Master. So this is the class that is going to have information related to equipping this item to our character. So things for like weapons, tools, things like that. So now that we've made this class, what we also need to do is, in our blueprints enums, we need to create a couple of enumerations. So the first one that we want to create is a blueprint enumeration. We'll name this E underscore equipable state and open this up. So this is going to be used for our animations to determine which animation state should we be playing depending on which item we have. Okay, because we have different animations for each different item that we have. Okay, so we'll go ahead and add a couple of these, and the first one will be named hatchet. The next one will be named bow. The next will be rock. Then we have a rifle. Then we have a rocket launcher. Default, so this would be no animation. Spear, and swimming. So these are basically the different animation states, and we're going to use this equipable state to determine which animation state should we be playing depending on which item we have equipped. And so the next thing that we need to create is a structure. So go into our blueprints, structures. Let's go ahead and right click and add a new blueprint structure. And we're going to name this to S underscore equipable info, and double click and open that up. And this will change this very first variable here to a name. So this name variable, and we're going to name this to socket name. So we're going to use this later on to determine where we should attach the item to, like what bone on the character's skeleton or the character's mesh, where should we basically attach the item to. Then we'll add another variable. This will be our E underscore equipable state, and we'll name this to animation state. So what animation should we be playing depending on what item we have equipped. And the last one, we need to create a class. So let's go ahead and create the class first. So in our blueprints, items, we want to right click and make a new folder for equippables. So name it equippables, and this is where we're going to be storing all of the classes, all the children class for this equippable master. So things like the actual rifle class, the pickaxe, the hatchet, all that stuff. So right click this equippable master and click create a child blueprint class of this equippable master, and then just click enter like that, and take this and move it and click move here into the equippables folder. Okay, so in here we're going to rename this to BP underscore first person equippable, and then right click and duplicate this and name this BP underscore third person equipable. So we're going to have two different classes, one for our first person and one for our third person. And the reason why we're doing this is because, well, one, we have two different animation blueprints. So we have our first person animation blueprint, which has, the custom first person animations for holding items. Then we have the third person animation blueprint. So we also need to have a first person and third person item so that we can see the item in the first person, but then the third person item is for other players to see that we have an item equipped. So now that we've made this class, we can go back into our equipable info, add a new variable, and we want to change this to our BP underscore first person equipable class reference. Okay. And then we want to rename this to first person equip class. And essentially, what we're going to be using is this third person equipable. So we're going to spawn this item first. In this item is going to be all like the logic related to like the hatchet, for example, chopping down a tree. All that stuff is going to be inside of the third person. And then it's going to have this first person mesh that we're also going to spawn just for the first person. So now close this, and we want to go to our items folder and into this equipable master, and then over in the event graph and in the variables here we want to go ahead and add some new variables. So we want to add a new variable and name this to equipable info. Compile and save that. We want to change this variable type to s underscore equipable info. Compile and save that. I also want to go ahead and delete all these events. Delete that. And let's go into our item master and make sure we do the same. We can delete all those events. And in our item master, under the class defaults, I want to disable this tick event, because basically the tick, even if you don't use the event, it's still enabled. So if you uncheck that, it will disable it. And if we compile save this inside of our equipable master, in our class defaults, you should see that unchecked. Okay, we're not going to use the tick. The last thing that I want to do is create a interface for this equipable master class. So in our blueprints, interfaces, I'm going to right click and create a new blueprint interface, and we'll name this to BPI underscore equipable item, and open that up. And for now we're going to add just one function. We'll name this to get equipable ref, and off of the output we'll add one output and changes to BP underscore equip BP equipable master object reference, and rename the output to equipable ref. Compile and save that, and now in our equipable master we'll go to our class settings, and under the interfaces we'll go ahead and add BPI underscore equipable item, and over here in our interfaces we have this get equipable ref. Go ahead and open this up and just drag off of this and do get reference to self. So now we have that interface set up, and then we can start pulling information like this equipable info for when we actually spawn the item to attach it to our character's hands. So that's going to be it for this lecture, just setting up the main classes that we need to create our hatchet item. In our next lecture we're going to create the actual hatchet item as well as import the hatchet model and set up the item class. So with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next lecture.